Hello and welcome to this general election debate for candidates in Arizona's 3rd Congressional District. This debate is sponsored by Clean Elections, the state's nonpartisan voter education agency. My name is Steve Goldstein. I'll be moderating this debate. And the format of the debate may be familiar to you. We've tried to keep the rules simple. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to make an opening statement and the same for a closing statement. Throughout the debate, we'll pose questions to each candidate, allow them to answer, and then make sure the other candidate has a chance to respond. With that, let's introduce the candidates for the debate. No Labels Party candidate Alan Aversa and Green Party candidate David Redke. Democratic candidate Yasemin Ansari was unable to join us. Mr. Redke, you have the first opening statement. You have 90 seconds, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm David Redke, the Green Party candidate, Arizona's 3rd Congressional District. I'm the only candidate have two births. First, I was born on Labor Day, September 7th, 1981. And my second one was on January 25th, 2007. When on my way to work at CDC Info, I was T-boned by a commercial tow truck that decided that a red light was merely a suggestion to them. With that in mind, I pulled myself up. I was able to get the care I needed, but I would also allow me to form the idea that I believe working people are the foundation of this country. I understand housing insecurity firsthand because I actually lived out of hotels through 3rd grade all the way up until the very end of 6th grade along Van Buren out of those hotels. Went to David Crockett Elementary School. When I was able to afford to finally go to school, I earned my degrees in English and communication concurrently. I actually became a certified teacher. I taught middle school and high school, and I'm running for the working families that have been overlooked for so long that we actually need a politician that will work for us to make sure that we are successful. Now, one of my proponents or my ideas is foundation economics, focusing on the foundation of our country, which is the working class. And a part of that, especially with healthcare, is TRICARE Prime for All. Bringing that because healthcare, as COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic showed us, healthcare is a part of national security. And if not everyone is being able to get the care they needed, it could weaken us as a country. So that is my main focus, is to make sure the working people of this state, the working people of this country are able to be successful, as well as they have the health care that allow them to be successful as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Aversa, you have 90 seconds for an opening statement, sir.
Hi, I'm Alan Aversa. I'm a teacher. I teach at charter schools in the Phoenix area. I've lived in Arizona since 2004. I attended the University of Arizona, graduated with a degree in physics and astronomy, and just have fell in love with teaching a laboratory class for pre-med students to take their MCAT exam. And I've taught at the high school, middle school, and K through 8 schools ever since then. My campaign motto is life, liberty, and justice under God, and we'll have, I think as this debate goes on, a little more time to go into that in more detail. My first time running for a political position was in 2012. I ran for a state house position. I've also run for U.S. House. I've had a lot of experience doing that. In 2022, I ran for school board for the Phoenix Union School District. In 2024, I was the Green Party candidate for District 3 here. And now, in 2026, I'm running as a No Labels Party candidate. Originally, it was called the Arizona Independent Party. I have more leanings. That's definitely my political affiliation. The independents are the biggest block of voters out there, and I want to help give them a voice and to represent everybody, not just a small class of people. All right, thank you.
Thank you both. Before we get into some of the big issues, I want to give each of you another 90 seconds or so. David, let me start with you. Running for Congress is a major effort. So I just want to have you talk to voters for, again, 90 seconds or so about why you thought this was the office, why this is the one you chose to run for, and why you're running for office. I know the issues are going to define part of that, but also just what is the drive within you to say, this is where I think I can make a difference?
Well, to be perfectly concise, the reason why I'm running is I want to help as many people as possible. That's why I became a public school teacher. I wanted to help as many students as I could, make sure to give them the skills to be successful. But I saw the actual, problems, the limitations. You can only reach so many students throughout your career. And I wanted to help the maximum number of people that I can. Furthermore, as a teacher and just seeing how all that is, how it's being underfunded, how the social services and such are being underfunded to make our country strong, I want to make sure I'm in a position to help as many people as possible to make sure the money that benefits us stays with us and doesn't go to benefit others. And I want to do everything I can in my power to make sure Arizona and Congressional District 3, it can be as strong as possible. And my motto on my website is build jobs, not bombs. So, yes.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Aversa, 90 seconds as well. Just give us a little more detail about why you thought this was important to run for Congress. What really is driving you right now for this candidacy?
Yeah, so when I first moved to the South Mountain Phoenix area in District 3 here in 2015, I saw that there was only one candidate on the ballot for U.S. House, and that happened for a handful of election cycles. And I thought, well, there's got to be more than just a Democrat option out there. And occasionally Republican candidate would run, but there's very few Republicans in this district, and so I thought, I need to run to represent the true voters in this area. I mean, I've taught at schools. I think some people would classify them as inner city schools, but very good students. They do come from poor backgrounds, and their values align with mine and mine with theirs. But I'm not seeing the representation for them, from the Democrat candidate that was on the ballot for several years. So that's one reason. And then another is that I saw when the Arizona Independent Party tried to make it easier for candidates to get on the ballot, I said, well, that's a good opportunity to try to get on the ballot. I only needed 64 nomination petition signatures, which isn't too hard to do. Just go around, tell people, and a lot of people are really excited that there's another option besides just Democrat and Republican. So that's another reason I'm decided to run.
Mr. Aversa, let me start with you on this one. And you both have some very interesting points of view that I want to make sure voters get a chance to hear. On this one, I went to your campaign website, and you have one specific statement that I want to read to you under the economics heading. It reads, local sustainable farming is the solution to the unemployment crisis. The means of production must be equitably distributed and decentralized, not centralized in the hands of the few. Can you give us more detail on that? You definitely feel like agriculture, farm working is very important. Give us about 2 minutes on that and give us some more detail, would you please?
Yeah, so my grandfather, so my mother was the youngest of 9 children on a farm family up in way northern North Dakota, almost by the border. And he had to move his whole family when my mom was in 5th grade across the country to Oregon because the big corporate farming industries were going in and buying up all the land and making it impossible for him, with just 100 cows to be a dairy farmer. So I definitely have that connection with my grandfather to farming. And then locally here in the district, I've volunteered like at the Andre House and at the St. Vincent de Paul, and they have their own little garden, that they help the homeless people learn how to grow crops, how to do that. And I've always thought, that's a really good thing to do, to eat locally. You get really good food. In fact, there's a place on 19th Ave here that does a co-op where you can buy a certain amount of land and they'll water it for you for free, and it's only something like $30 a month. And there's a lot of people, there's just a lot of homeless people I see down by the Capitol that are just sitting around, and they could be employed working these co-ops and working to grow food locally. And it's better, I think, than imported produce from outside the state. The local farmers markets and local co-ops will really help. And that's one big principle of my campaign, is that what the government can't do at a bigger scale, you should do it at a small scale. And definitely at a small scale, we can do farming, we can fix the housing crisis, we can help pregnant ladies that are in need, we can do these things locally. It's not going to take some federal government program from Washington, D.C. We have all the means here in Arizona, or even just in South Mountain here, to do that. So, yeah.
Mr. Rick, in a moment, I'm going to ask you about foundation economics, because I know that's a big thing for you. But I wanted to ask you to respond a little bit to what Mr. Aversa said about localizing things like this and being giving more opportunities to, I'm going to label it the cliche of the little guy who may not get opportunities. Can I get you to give me 90 seconds on that? What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Redkey?
When it comes to actually the little guy, I mean, I know particularly well the little guy has been stepped on for so long. But in the way that can happen is the government or the federal government, the pushback against my opposition is that, trying to make to take the federal government out of it. I believe the federal government should function as a way to kind of protect the little guy to allow them to be successful. Because on Monday, August 10th, my dad, who didn't have the fortune, didn't have the financial security, didn't have the financial ability to finish high school, had to go straight into work, and he worked his whole life. But on August 10th, at the age of 74 years old, he died from just not being, he didn't have the water or anything. He worked doing landscaping, and seeing that kind of thing happen, I believe that was a section where potentially he could have been benefited by a federal government program that would allow him to become to first get his high school diploma, as well as allow him to become a person that contributes to this community, as opposed to just doing landscaping, which helps sustain the wealthy. Because that's who he worked for. He always worked for the super wealthy doing their landscaping, and he could never get ahead, and he basically worked himself to death, as my brother would say. He actually said he did that.
Ricky, very sorry to hear that. Yeah, very sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I honestly believe that, the government should act as a way to allow the working class to be successful as easily, as quickly as possible. Because if you look back at the 40s, after World War II, 50s, 60s, everyone, you'd have the stereotypical, the one person going to work, the other person would stay home, take care of the house. That has gone away. Now families have to have 4, 5, 6 jobs, doing part-time jobs all over the place. We are so far removed from what made us, the baby boomer era, to now, we need to go back to have those benefits where that was realized by the baby boomers, and we should have it ourselves. So we should go back to that time where we're able to, like, one person needs to work, they'll have enough money to take a family out, raise a family, and be able to have a successful life, and have children that can go to college, afford to go to college, and won't have to rack up student debt.
Mr. Aversa, we've lost your camera. Are you back with us? Just to let people know.
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry, my camera
good.
keeps fading out.
That's no problem. I just want to remind people who are watching us now that you are still with us. So even if your camera fades in and out, we will still go to you. Let me ask you a 60-second follow-up, because, and I'm making this assumption, both of you are definitely fans of feeling like the little person has been stepped on a bit. Maybe that's one commonality the two of you have. I don't want to, if I'm jumping too far, let me know. But Mr. Aversa, let me give you a minute on that, just in terms of the idea of even some of the concepts that you advocate for. Do you think some of those come from the idea that, as Mr. Redke said, some people are having to work 3 and 4 jobs, and the traditional sort of family structure has been changed? Is there something you would advocate for when it comes to government, or are you thinking more in terms of each community should be sort of doing these things on their own?
Yeah, I think the communities should. I mean, if the community doesn't, then that's when the government should come in and help. But that really isn't the ideal role of the government. I mean, the family is the cell of society. This whole society is based on family, and we're seeing all of society falling apart because the families are falling apart. They're not staying together. They're not supporting each other. I heard the story of a young teenage girl that got pregnant, and it was actually Target, the store Target. I don't know, it was one of those stores. I don't know if it was Target specifically, that found out, that started marketing to her like, oh, here's all this pregnancy stuff. And the store actually knew, through her phone and all that, that she was pregnant before her own father knew. I mean, which is really, really disturbing because the father and families are the basis of society. So I definitely agree with Mr. Redkey about that it's unfortunate that now, the father can't provide for his family, and oftentimes the mother has to leave the home and go out to work and put her kids in the daycare, things like that. That's where the community has to come in, and especially churches too, which are kind of like an extended family. They have a role to help in those situations.
I want to get back to a big picture, Mr. Redkey, in a second. I promise I'll ask you about foundation economics next. But I just want to ask you both 30 seconds if you can do it. I can give you 60, but I really want to know, do you think that to whatever extent, and Mr. Redkey, let me start with you, does there have to be some kind of a revolution? And I don't mean taking up arms, I don't mean that, but the idea that even the government we have now, whether one of you likes it, one of you doesn't, or neither one of you likes it, is there a feeling that the people themselves need to sort of say, okay, the power has been shifted too much to the so-called 1%. And the average person, again, there's been discussion about there's really not much of a middle class left anymore economically. Mr. Redkey, give me a minute on that. And then Mr. Reverse, I want to give you a minute on that as well.
Yes. So in regards to like the middle class is basically just doesn't exist anymore. I believe that we, when it comes to this country, we should really kind of promote the type of economic policies and positions and the action of the government to make sure that families can actually, it's financially worthwhile to stay together. It's financially worthwhile to grow a family. It's financially possible to grow a family and help build in their communities and make sure that they're successful as much as possible. Because when that doesn't happen, you see a rise in crime. You see a rise of just people being harmed. And the reason why that happens is the people that do commit the crimes, they usually, if you empathize with them, you understand their position, is that they probably do it because they don't see any other option available. And that shows that we have been failing them for so long. And it has been shown in other areas when people have more opportunities, more financial opportunities, crime actually goes down. And we don't have to over police. We don't have to do any of those things that actually harm minority communities overall. So just making sure they have a chance to be successful will make our crime rates go down and makes everyone happier overall.
Okay. Mr. Roberto, what do you think about that? Do you think the middle class has been set aside, and are there things that you think should be? Again, I said revolution, maybe not quite to that extent, but do you think there's some dramatic changes that need to take place? And I know it's only a minute, but give me a minute or so on what you think should be done.
Between the rich and the poor just keeps getting wider and wider and wider. And now the fewer and fewer start. that relates to that quote you read from my website about the economics and the ability to work and to have the tractor that you need to till the land and all that. Like that shouldn't just be left up to some organization in Washington D.C. or somewhere else. It should be like, for example, during the Great Depression, the programs then would give people the ability to work for themselves and to make a profit. They wouldn't just hand out things. It wasn't just a handouts. It was here is a tractor. Here's this tool that you need. Here are the supplies that you need to start up a business. The government certainly can help with that, as well as tax incentives. I liked what Mr. Redkey was saying. Tax incentives to keep the families intact, to keep them together, to make sure that they're not trying to find what they need from somewhere else or resorting to crime to find what they need. So I agree with that.
Okay, and now, Mr. Redkey, I'm going to go to you about foundation economics. I promise I will ask you a follow-up if I need to, please, for this particular one, as you explain the concept and what you want to do. I want to give you 2 minutes to start, give Mr. Aversa a chance to weigh in, and then I'll give you a little bit more time if we need it. But go ahead. I know that's a real base for your campaign, so tell us about it.
Okay, foundation economics is basically, it goes by other names. It goes by bubble up or trickle up economics or any of those terms. It's the inverse or the reverse of trickle down economics, which has shown the large growth and inequality across this country, bringing us back to like 1908 level of inequality, where you have the people that are super wealthy and all of us at the bottom are just like fighting over scraps. So how to combat that is what I believe, as opposed to cutting taxes, it would be the inverse, would be raising the taxes to actually force the businesses as well as the wealthy to invest in the community, invest in their employees, so they can actually help buy as well as maintain a lifestyle that allows those workers to be successful. And with the actual increase in taxation, you will see less artificial inflation being introduced into communities. Prices will go down. People will actually won't feel the bite at the grocery store where they have to just look at all the food and potentially grab everything they need, and then they're like, oh man, this is too much, and have to start putting stuff back. That is showing a failure of basically this government that's been going on for so long, since it has been slowly increasing since the 1980s with trickle-down economics. And we need to reverse that. We need to undo it, and we need to focus on the working class, because when they are successful, everyone else will also be successful as well. But the bare minimum of a society is the quality of life for those at the bottom. That's where it's measured from. You don't measure the quality of life for those that are super rich. You don't measure the quality of a house by just its ceiling. You go inside, when you do your inspection, you look at the foundation. When it's crumbling, you're like, okay, I don't want this house. I want people to look at our country and say, the foundation is strong again. This is where we can build. We can build something great. And that would, come from raising the tax specifically on the high earners, specifically, which would be over $200,000. Every dollar made over $200,000 for single, and then $400,000 for families filing jointly. That would basically incentivize people to invest in their employees, as well as for those that do not want to pay their employees, it gives the government a source of revenue to help offset those people that are not being paid fairly by their companies. You hear about the Walmarts of this world where they don't pay their employees enough, where they actually qualify for access, or they qualify for Medicaid because they were paid so low. That's horrible, and I want to do everything in my power to undo that.
I'll jump in because I want to ask you a follow-up in a second. Mr. Reversa, if you're with us, I want to ask you a question related to the raising of the taxes. I wanted to see what your philosophy is on that. Do you think that we have a good level of taxes at this point, or would you like to see them raised?
No, I would like to see taxes lowered and a lot of government agencies cut. There's a lot of funds out there that could be spent much more wisely. I mean, our national debt now is up to $40 trillion. I mean, that's crazy. I don't think the solution is to tax people more. I think the solution is to cut and to spend the money. For example, with regard to reparations for Black Americans, that issue, a lot of people ask, like, well, why would you support that? And the money actually is there and set aside for them, but it's just not being given to them. And the U.S. government over a century has promised that it would, and hasn't. So it's not about raising taxes. That's not. I mean, families can already barely make ends meet. So I'm not for raising taxes. I'm for cutting taxes and spending money more wisely, cutting programs that we don't need. For example, Planned Parenthood, which doesn't help women, it actually hurts them. So, yeah.
And Mr. Redke, yes, absolutely follow up. But let me ask one quick question before you follow up specifically. I did want to ask you how you came up with the number of 200,000 for a single and 400,000 for couples. There are some, maybe not people on this call, but there are some people who would say that with inflation, $200,000 is not what it was 20 years ago. How did you decide on 200,000 as opposed to, say, 300, 400, 500?
I came up with that. Basically, I just FDR, which build the baby boomer era. Now, when it comes to actual taxation, the people that would be affected by it are the top percent. They're about 2.5% of the families in the United States. So the other 97.5% of the families in the United States would not be affected by this. And this is those that benefit from our country to be able to pay their fair share and allow to maintain this country and make sure it's successful. Because right now, the workers are the ones that are, not only doing all the work, but they're also paying most of, if not all, the taxes now, especially with this big, beautiful bill, or big atrocious bill, as it's been called, saw the large wealth inequality that's been coming across our country just accelerate by far. We're going back to like 1908, like where there was no social services and people died. And then you have the book, the specific The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, which was about the meatpacking industry, where it was so horrible. You see people falling in the type of deregulation that Mr. Aversa is trying to talk about, where rats would fall into the meat and it still be packaged up and shipped off, and people would lose limbs and stuff. That was the reason why the Clean Food and Drug Act was passed in the first place. When people read that book, they were like, "Oh my God, this is happening." Yeah, I don't want to go back to that. I don't know anyone that would want to go back to that. But I want to make sure that we are a country overall that has those gains that were brought by the muckrakers in the 30s to actually stay and be reinstalled in our country to make sure that we're successful, and then we can lead. Because right now we're falling behind other countries when it comes to areas like high-speed rail, infrastructure, technology. They're just leaving us behind, and we need to do everything in our power to make the United States the exemplar, like the leader for every other country. We want to be the light upon the hill. We don't want to be just like any other country. We want to be the leaders.
Mr. Aversa, I want to switch topics with you. A little bit of a transition from that, because it's under the umbrella, the broad umbrella of the economy and jobs. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes on this if you'd like it. Data centers have become controversial. In Arizona, a lot of that's related to water and energy use. Where do you balance the need to protect? We've been through a decades-long drought already in the desert as it is. When it comes to this district, where do you feel about the potential of job creation with data centers, but balancing that with the use of water and energy? How would you prioritize that if you were in Congress?
Yeah, so I'm actually opposed to data centers taking over. I don't think it's a good idea to help the unemployment issue in Arizona. Like I mentioned earlier, a better way would be to give people the means to production, like to help them. Like for example, the homeless, that could be used to help with our local agriculture. Data centers in the area, they're giant companies that come in, and it's kind of against my philosophy of how things need to be decentralized. Like my data and all that I should have on my own phone, and that should be my right to have. There shouldn't be another company storing that on some server in some other state or something. So I'm opposed to data centers. I don't think it's a good solution for helping with unemployment.
Okay, and I'll come back to your follow-up in a sec. Mr. Redkey, what's your general take on data centers, and do you have concerns about the water and energy use?
Okay, first part, when it comes to the water for cooling, we're a desert, and they're already talking about, our water supply being cut for this coming year, and our allocation for water being cut from the Colorado River, because global climate change has caused the water levels to drop in the Colorado River, and we're going to be getting less water. So that's going to basically dry up Phoenix, dry up Arizona. And that's a large part of that water goes to data centers, and data centers are job destroyers. People don't design, AI or technology like that to make themselves, their lives easier. It's a way to extract wealth by allowing people to utilize that. And thankfully, what the data centers hopefully will go the way of the dodo when it comes to regulation. But furthermore, those data centers, AI and stuff, has not been a financial windfall for those specific companies. It's being propped up by speculations, being propped up by investment. It has not been able to produce the money needed to sustain itself. And so hopefully that it will get destroyed that way. But, if that doesn't happen quick enough, the federal government needs to come in and kind of stop those data centers from being built, because they're drying us out. They're taking our water away. I don't want to have to drive 50 miles because I'm thirsty. And data centers are going to make that, push it to not only 50 miles, they'll probably, the goal of the corporations would be to push it to 100 miles, 200 miles for you to get a glass of water. No, I want to make it for, where those data centers are stopped, they're controlled, and the water that they use does not come from us. They have their own source. And furthermore, it does not destroy jobs like what has been doing now. What people envisioned and designed it for is to save money for their corporations and harm the working class in the process.
And Mr. Aversa, let me ask you a 1-minute follow-up on that. It sounds like neither one of you is a fan of data centers, but Mr. Redke talked more about sort of federal control versus local control. There have been some communities around Arizona that have voted them down themselves. How would you feel about more federal control if data centers got out of hand, or would you prefer they would be locally voted down by city councils and county supervisors and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it should be locally first, I think, before the federal government is only there to deal with interstate commerce, things that have to do with Arizona interacting with Colorado or with Nevada or another state. What we can control and decide on locally first should be done locally first before trying to get the government involved. I know regarding water rights, there's been a lot of incompetence, I would say, regarding how we're dealing with the water shortage in the Colorado River and all that, and then it always ends up being that, now we have to call the federal government in because we can't make the decisions ourselves. No, we need to make it ourselves. Arizona has sovereignty to govern itself. We only need the federal government when we're dealing with other states. Water rights certainly do involve other states. So it might come to that point, but I really hope that we can resolve the issues first before bringing in the federal government.
Okay, Mr. Redke, you've got 1-minute follow on that.
I strongly believe the federal government should be involved to make sure that the states work well, but also recognize the right of every citizen, because if it was not for the federal government, I would not be married to my wife, who is Black, because if it wasn't, specifically there was segregation in Arizona as well as specifically the South, that the federal government came in there and broke that up with the civil rights movement. Basically, the 14th Amendment, that stuff allowed, didn't allow arbitrary designation of a person, being less than by a state because a few people decided, okay, that person should not be able to vote. That person should not be able to choose who they marry. That person should not be able to have a family, just because that other person is the wrong skin color. That is why I believe that the federal government serves a crucial role to recognize that every person is entitled to liberty and prosperity and being able to be successful. And it doesn't matter the color of the skin, it doesn't matter the religion they practice, it doesn't matter the sex they are. The only thing that matters is that they live in the United States and they produce and help this country be successful. And anything that goes against that, any state that decides they want to go against that, the federal government should come in there and it's like, hey, no, we're all citizens under this Constitution. You can't pick and choose who benefits from it.
Mr. Aversa, I want to go to another issue that definitely affects federal government, but also local government. And that is on your campaign website, there's a heading titled Life. I know that you have very strong views about reproductive rights, abortion, et cetera. We had the Supreme Court make a decision, and it was thrown to the states. In Arizona, there was a territorial era restriction on abortion that was modified. So I want to get your take on that. At this point, if you were to be a member of Congress, would you work to put some of those abortion restrictions back in place? And if so, how would you go about it?
Yeah, so abortion needs to be regulated. We've seen now here in Arizona and in several other states that they have in their state constitutions the supposed right to kill your unborn child. I think at the federal level, there needs to be a personhood amendment recognizing that the unborn human beings are persons of equal dignity to born human beings. I liked how Mr. Redkey mentioned the 14th Amendment, which says, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The unborn children, over 60 million of them now since Roe v. Wade in 1973, have been unjustly murdered in their mother's wombs. This is something that, how we treat the little man in a society really reflects on the society itself. And how we treat the disadvantaged, the homeless, the weak and vulnerable, the elderly. This is where, if the states are not doing that, or if the local governments are not doing that, then this is where the federal government has to come in and defend the rights of those who don't have a voice to stand up for themselves.
Mr. Redkey, what are your perspectives on reproductive rights?
It's a woman's body, and it's their choice to do with it. If they want to carry a embryo in their body, they can do that. If they don't want to, they have a right to an abortion, because it is their body, it's their choice. It's not my place to tell a woman what she should or should not carry in her body, because the idea of saying, oh, the embryo is a person trying to, a person, and if you abort them, that's murder. No, because that's taken away the agency of the woman that gets pregnant. Maybe she is raped. Maybe the actual child that she was born, it was from a one night stand or something. Any number of things could have happened, but it's still saying that woman needs to carry that child to term. Is saying that woman who has that baby does not have any rights. And I do not believe in any, the women's suffrage, every number of things that have actually allowed women to advance. I don't want us to go back where women are just viewed as something to produce babies and nothing more. If they get pregnant, they're pushed aside and they can't do whatever they can to, make their lives better. They have to continue to maintain that embryo until it's born. And usually when you see stuff like that, once the baby is born, they don't care about the baby. There's so many children that don't receive enough care, that don't receive enough food. Those people that are speaking out, those pro-life people that are speaking about that, should actually try to help those children that are being deprived, that are alive, that are homeless, that are in foster care. If you're against abortion, go down to your local orphanage and then adopt a child. If you want a child to be born, if you don't want a woman to have an abortion, if she gives birth to that baby, adopt that baby from her, so she can have the peace of mind knowing that, that child she was forced to carry is still living, but is able to be cared for. Whereas these pro-life people typically want to remove that. They want to just protect the infant or the fetus until it's born and then forget about it.
Okay, Mr. Reverse, I know it's a very important issue for you. I'm going to give you 90 seconds on this, but directly, specifically, because this is something that people will argue. They will say, okay, folks who, and Mr. Redkey just said it, I want you to respond to that in terms of those who are, as he characterized it, pro-life, may not be as inclined to support a child that is born into certain situations. I think this sort of goes back to some of our conversation about affordability and the economy. Would you like to see more done after a child is taken to term and is born? Would you like to see more assistance or more help for those children?
Yeah, a lot of help already is being done with the pregnancy resource centers. At least in the Phoenix area, there's twice as many of those as there are abortion facilities, which is a good sign that, the community can come together, help pregnant women, do baby bottle drives, raise money for diapers, help them find a job if they're unemployed, things like that. So that I think it's I mean, there might be some pro-lifers that don't care about the children after they're born, but in my experience, the vast majority of them do, and they come from, they have many children themselves, they adopt children, and they offer them financial support. Now, one of the primary reasons, this comes right from the Department of Health in Arizona, I think the top reason is economic reasons why women feel pressured into aborting their child. And if we could come up and say, hey, I know you're having a hard time, you had an unplanned pregnancy, and you're about to be evicted from your apartment or something. Here, let's raise some money. I can ask my friends if they can help you with your rent. Or this is a perfect opportunity for the community to come together and to support these women. And the vast majority, I've read statistics, 70% of women feel pressured into having an abortion because they weren't given another option. They weren't told about the local community resources. Even just passing out a little flyer that has all the phone numbers of who to call if you need job assistance, who to call if you need assistance with your rent, things like that. Even that can change a woman's mind outside of an abortion facility to choose life and to keep her baby. So I think it's a mischaracterization. My mother, too, and this is kind of a personal issue to me, my mother had an ectopic pregnancy, and I hear that often. A lot of people say, oh, well, your mother would have been denied medical care, if she were in a state that, like Texas, where it's very regulated, 6 weeks after the heartbeat and all that, they fine you like $100,000 in Texas if you attempt to have an abortion at that stage. But my mother did not have an abortion, and I insist this over and over. What she had was a treatment for her ectopic pregnancy. It was unfortunate that the baby that was stuck in the fallopian tube died. It would have been great if I had a sibling. I'm an only child. So this is kind of a personal issue to me as well, and it's affected our society as well. That almost all of us know somebody who has had an abortion or who is struggling with the consequences of that. And as a society, as a local community, we should get together, fund like Maggie's Place, which is a homeless shelter for pregnant ladies. Fund them. Don't defund that. That's right within District 3 here. And that's especially the financial incentives that often helps a woman to change the mind. If she has a financial reason to continue to be a mother, that's where the government can come in, or the community too can come in and give those incentives.
Okay, thanks for sharing that story with us. Yeah, Mr. Redkey, very, very briefly on this, because I want to ask a broader healthcare question, but I'll give you a few seconds on this.
Yeah, as a person, my mom's boyfriend at the time, my biological father, wanted my mom to get an abortion. So my mom made the choice to have me, but I don't want to be the reason why she lost her choice. That's taken away a woman's agency. That's why, if my mom got an abortion, I wouldn't be here, but that's beside the point. My mom chose to have me. That was her choice. It's not my place as a man to tell a woman what she should or should not do with her body when it comes to carrying a child.
Okay, Mr. Redkey, let me come back to you on this, and Mr. Reverse, I'll come to you on this as well. Gentlemen, we've got about 15 minutes left until your closing statement. So go as long as you want, but I just want to make sure we have a little more time for some of these issues. Mr. Redkey, again, gentlemen, you can go as specific on this as you want, but I'm gonna start out sort of an umbrella question. Mr. Redkey, for a lot of folks who do not have employer-provided health care, having healthcare coverage is very difficult, hard to afford. Let's ask you the big question. First of all, how much should the federal government be involved in that? And are there things you'd like to see done to make healthcare coverage more affordable and perhaps better? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Oh, sorry for that. Yes, my healthcare plan, I believe, would do away with the current model where it's causing bankruptcy from healthcare debt and all kind of issues that come from being able to afford healthcare, as well as putting off healthcare because they can't afford it. My plan, I have what is called, I believe should be implemented, is the extension of the TRICARE Prime program, because I have family in the military. My brother-in-law is active duty, and as well as his wife, and they enjoy their TRICARE Prime plan. And I believe that when we saw the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people had to put off healthcare, and the number of deaths increased substantially because they didn't have access to healthcare because they couldn't afford it. But through the TRICARE Prime plan, that would take the same type of benefits that the military enjoys, and that any healthcare facility that receives federal funding would have to recognize those rates, which would be, the catastrophic cap of $1,000. Once you reach that $1,000, all healthcare for that family is free of charge, because when the workers are actually healthy and able to work, our country just functions. We don't want to have mass illnesses that basically break down our economy, break down our country, break down particular businesses, because this actually benefits small businesses overall, because they don't have to worry about healthcare. They don't have to worry about their employees trying to find another job, because they can stay with their company and allow it to grow, because healthcare is already taken care of. The government has provided the same type of healthcare that the military enjoys, and for national readiness and making sure for national security purposes, every person in the United States has the health care that allows them to be successful and contribute to our country. Thank you.
Mr. Aversa, let's talk about healthcare. Obviously, for folks who don't have employer-provided healthcare, it can be very tough to go on the market and get healthcare coverage. What's your perspective on that in terms of what could be done at the government level, what you'd like to see done at the community level to make it so more people have at least basic coverage that they can afford?
Yeah, I think getting to the root cause of it, which is often malnutrition, not eating good food, causes a lot of health problems. And again, that goes back to eating locally, supporting local agriculture, having that sort of local culture. This is something in the U.S. I think we have one of the highest rates of chronic diseases. And a lot of it stems from not eating, not having a proper diet, not getting the good nutrition. So I don't think the government, we've seen this in other countries where there's a state-sponsored medical plan, and it's often not the best quality. So I think we can go more at the root cause of, what's causing all these chronic diseases in the U.S. and it's nutrition. It's, we need to eat. We need to learn how to cook for ourselves, not always go out to fast food, eat together, family meals. That's a really big issue with just families having dinner, every night. It's a good time, to keep the families bonded together, and for the children to learn to talk with their older siblings, and to have good conversations, and to slow down and just spend those times having family meals together is another good start. So I don't think, it's just a government plan is a good idea. Often when the government gets itself involved with anything, whether it's scientific research or anything, it doesn't do a very good job. So I'm a big supporter of families, small family-owned businesses doing things locally first. And there's healthcare cost-sharing co-ops that can be done as well. Where you don't have to go to a big federal healthcare, private healthcare, or government healthcare plan. So there's cost-sharing plans that many people don't know about either, and that's good because people keeps it local, keeps it within the state or within the local community.
Mr. Aversa, before I go to Mr. Radke, I want to ask you a follow-up on that, because there is a part of that there are going to be some viewers who think, okay, there are people who maybe because of affordability, they're not being able to get the nutrition they need. Okay, that's understandable. But what about the other part when there's a catastrophic situation, something that is a surprise that leads to major hospital bills and that kind of thing? So that's sort of the second part of my question is there anything you'd advocate for there to make sure that if someone is affected by a disease that comes out of nowhere, or some sort of accident that comes out of nowhere, that they're not made bankrupt by that? So there's part of that as well. I understand what you're saying about maybe you don't need to go to the doctor as much, but what about if something happens to make sure that a person has some sort of coverage that doesn't set them back for the rest of their lives? Do you have any thoughts on that? Mr. Aversa, that was to you.
Sorry, I was having some technical problems with my camera. Can you still hear me at least?
We can hear you just fine. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in terms of that's what those cost sharing plans were all about, to help in those cases of big, you get cancer and it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay the bills. That's, again, the local community can still help in those situations. So I don't think, if that the federal government or even the local state government should be involved unless it can be handled, on a smaller scale first. So.
Mr. Redkey, are you still with us? I don't see you up on our screen. Good,
Yeah,
there you are.
I'm still.
Because-
I just turned it off. So yeah.
Okay, because I want to give you just 90 seconds on this. Behind you, those who are watching can see an image, and I'm presuming that is what you talked about in your opening statement. I presume that was the car you were in. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So can you give us a short version of how much you were affected? I know we're not going to have a lot of time to get into some of the deeper legal aspects of it, but in terms of healthcare, how were you affected by that accident? And would you have wanted to have better coverage perhaps than you did? Give us a little bit of background on that.
Because I didn't have health insurance at the time, I was taken to the hospital. They automatically put me on the Access. And with the Access program, what they did, specifically the traumatic brain injury I suffered from there, the two type of major medical procedures to treat that is the clip-in or coil-in method. Those are very expensive treatments. Because I was on Access, they decided just to wait, so it self-resolved on its own. So in that way, I don't need to have follow-up care or anything when it comes to that specific aspect, and my body healed itself. I was fortunate in that respect. So I was put on government program. I'm here today and able to talk to you today because of that, and that's why I advocate for that, because if I was not on it, or that option wasn't available to me, I would not be here, and my children, my family would not be here. So I'm thankful for that, because I'm here today because of it.
Okay. Mr. Aversa, let's go to, as I'm looking at the clock, we've got about 5 minutes till closing statements. I want to ask you both a little bit about education. The Federal Department of Education has been gutted. And so I want to ask Mr. Aversa, let me start with you. I want to give you 90 seconds on this. How heavily involved do you think the federal government should be in K-12 education in Arizona?
I don't think it should be involved at all. Arizona has the ability to govern itself regarding education, and it's done a really good job with that regarding school choice, the empowerment scholarship accounts, which is basically our vouchers program. They have $1.1 billion they spent in the past year helping 100,000 Arizona students with a team of only about 30 or so employees. So they've got one of the most streamlined, efficient, what I would call a vouchers program, the ability to allow parents to choose which school they think would be best for their children. And parents have this right. Parents have the right to educate their children. They are the first educators of their children. And for the government to come in and tell the parents, oh, you don't know how to teach your children, you're not, that's not good. The parents should know what is being taught their children. They should have the right to withdraw their children from classes that are teaching them things that they don't agree with, especially regarding sexual education and matters like that. And so the federal government, I can kind of understand the rationale for a federal Department of Education to kind of keep all the states at, the same standard in case somebody moves from a different state. They'll be able to send their children to that school and expect them to just pick right up where Arizona left off educating them. But I think we've seen. So I teach at a charter school, and I've seen just with how much money per student. Each charter school student gets about a couple $1,000s less from the government than a public school student, and they're still able to outperform them in terms of academics. So it's not just a matter of federal government coming in and sending a whole bunch of money to the schools and thinking that that'll fix the education problem. It's about what is being taught, how it's being taught. Those are important, and then also the right for the parents to to choose what school, if they want to homeschool them, that they want to send them to a charter school, do they want to send them to a public school. That's the right that should not be taken away from the parents.
And Mr. Redkey, we've got about 2 minutes or so left. So the big education question, I'll give you 90 seconds on this. How much involvement do you think the federal government should have in K-12 education in Arizona?
Okay, when it comes to K-12 education, I think the federal government should really specifically provide grants or access to monies to allow public schools. I'm from traditional public schools. I taught at traditional public schools, so schools that actually have a governing board and all that stuff. So not a business that teaches people like a charter school. I'm a public school teacher, born and bred, and I'm also fighting for them. And I believe the government should focus on making sure writing, specifically by hand on paper or on some material, is a cornerstone of the education process. Because what we have seen with test scores, because of more and more utilization of computers due to funding and stuff along those lines, as we saw a drop in test scores. People are not developing, their children are not developing as intended. They're not getting smart because you're not writing stuff down. What my professor at ASU West told me, Dr. Mann, she said, when you basically write down, the best way to take down information is to write it down. That's the best way to remember it. And the way I linked it is that when you write stuff down, you're not only writing on the piece of paper, but you're also writing it in your brain, because you're actually taking the focus and the muscle, everything that moves along to move that pen, pencil, whatever. And it actually allows you to write down that information and retain that information better than using something that's computered. So we need to focus on the basics of handwriting and making sure people are able to write, so they are able to be successful and understand what is happening and be able to write it down and not just type it out on a keyboard.
Gentlemen, thank you both so much for the conversation. And now we've arrived at closing statements. Mr. Aversa, you have our first closing statement, and you have 90 seconds. Go ahead, sir.
All right, yeah, thank you for inviting me to this debate, and I'm glad it happened. Unlike last election cycle, the debate didn't happen, so thank you for encouraging this free debate and free exchange of ideas. So again, my campaign motto is life, liberty, and justice under God. Life being the foundational right that we all have, and it should be protected from the moment of conception all the way up till natural death. So from very young people, old people, people with disabilities, healthy people, no innocent lives should be taken away. Our money should not be sent to Ukraine or to Israel to fund foreign wars or genocides. We don't need, we've already have the genocide of the unborn in the United States. We don't need to be funding more genocides overseas. Liberty that tied into education, ignorance is what enslaves us. So to be able to teach people and to be able to have access to good quality education, that's a right that really gives us true liberty. Because once you know something, you can learn how to build something, you can get a good job, you can support your family. Knowledge is power. And everybody has a right to learn and to know the truth. Justice is another foundational cornerstone. Justice is giving to everybody what belongs to him, and certainly a family deserves a mother and a father. Every child deserves a mother and a father in a intact family that stays together to help give. Because as I mentioned earlier, the family is the cell of society. If the families are sick and if the families are dissolving, then our society won't be able to hold together either. And also under God, religion and churches play a big role in forming and making the United States as great as it is. The churches have helped educate children. They've helped meet especially vulnerable, like single mothers. They've helped them raise their families. They've brought the communities together. So religion, there's this idea that the founding fathers were for separation of church and state, and no, they actually weren't. The First Amendment does not say that the church and state should not have a positive influence on one another. And of course, God is the source of all our rights and our goods. As in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all
I need you to
men are
wrap it up
created
here in a
equal.
moment.
Yeah, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much for being here. And Mr. Redkey, 90 seconds for you for a closing statement. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Today, I ask you to judge which candidate, even the candidate that decided not to be here today, will put the working families of Arizona, specifically Congressional District 3, first and foremost, serving in the federal government. Now, I believe in foundation economics puts working families first through universal health care, my TRICARE Prime program, fair compensation, affordable housing, public education, family security, and accountable federal spending. TRICARE Prime for All recognizes that healthcare is both an individual right and a part of national security. I will confront corruption through disclosure, equal rules, independent review, and strict accounting. My shirt says stand up for Palestine because I believe that is the baseline to show what you really believe in. And I believe human rights cannot depend on nationality, religion, or political influence. I will apply the same standard to everyone while I'm serving in Congress. Yesterday's Supreme Court ruling did not itself eliminate or restrict mail-in voting, but it is a pathway to allow that to happen. So I will not depend on party machinery to help me get elected. I will not ask for large money or large donations from Israel or any of these business interests. I will knock on every door that I can, talk to every voter that I can to make sure that they know that I'm the person that will fight for them. I listen to the residents, and I'll make sure that they are heard by me. Now, if you want a representative who will be put working people first, confront corruption, and defend human rights when powerful institutions prefer silence, vote for me. I'm that type of person. I will be the person that will unair or expose that corruption, and I'll fight for the little guy. Now, if you want someone that is more of the same, the status quo, then you can vote for someone else. As this old saying goes, insanity is doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. I'm David Redkey, candidate for Arizona's 3rd Congressional District, and I'm doing everything in my power to make sure I earn your vote and fight for you because that's what we do. We're all in this together. Thank you.
Okay. Green Party candidate David Redkey, No Labels Party candidate Alan Aversa. Gentlemen, thanks so much for the conversation today.
Thank you.
And that wraps up this general election debate for Arizona's 3rd Congressional District. The Arizona general election is on November 3rd. Early voting starts October 7th, and the voter registration deadline is October 5th. To register to vote, head to azcleanelections.gov. I'm Steve Goldstein. Thanks for watching.